I was on the door of the small dining hall when the Queen broke. I've stood that door 100 nights. Family dinners, the private kind, no guests, no press, just the King and the Queen and the four of them, Cash in the air, his brother Dane and the two cousins, Esme and Leora, the whole future of the house around one table. And I'll be honest, those dinners had gone cold long before that night. There was a feud in that family, a real one, a year and more old, between the brothers and the cousins, over an inheritance and a slight and a marriage that fell through. The kind of wound that starts as something specific and rots into something general until nobody can quite remember the first cut, only that they hate. They'd sit at that table, the four of them, and you could have skated on the air between them. But it wasn't the four who broke that night, it was the Queen. Mirabelle, the King's wife. Second wife, the one who came after, you know the type. Every house has one, the one nobody chose and everybody tolerated. 20 years of standing slightly to the side of a family that had never quite made a place for her. And that night something in her let go. I don't know the exact trigger. I was on the door, I caught pieces. There'd been talk of the King's health, which is failing. Everyone knows it's failing, and talk of what comes after. A regency, arrangements, and I think she heard in those arrangements the sound of her own future being decided without her in the room. The outsider's whole life is hearing herself decided in rooms she's not in. And that night, at that table, with the people who'd never made her one of them, she heard it one time too many and she broke. I won't write what she said, partly because I only caught the half of it through a heavy door and partly because it doesn't deserve repeating. It was ugly. It was 20 years of swallowed bitterness coming up all at once. Accusations, old grievances, things said to wound, aimed at the children and at the dead first queen they all still loved and at the king himself. It went on. The voice of a person who stopped caring what it costs because the thing they've been holding back has finally cost too much to hold. And then a chair, and the door I was beside flung open hard enough to crack against the wall, and the Queen came through it white and shaking and didn't see me, didn't see anything, and went down the corridor fast, and behind her at the table silence. 4 young royals and a sick old king sitting in the wreckage of it. That's the outburst. That's what everyone would come to call the Queen's furious outburst, the thing that sparked palace tension, the way these things get named down into a headline. And I'll say it plain, since this is my own journal and no one's reading over my shoulder. She was wrong. What she did at that table was wrong. Being miserable is a reason and it's not a permission, and she brought a whole family's worst night down on people who, 2 of them at least, were barely more than children. She was in the wrong. Hold that. It matters for everything that came after. The second day. By morning it was through the whole of Stormcourt. It always is. A palace is a stomach, it digests everything by dawn. The maids knew, the kitchens knew, the stable lads knew. By the kind of magic these places run on, half of it had already grown. In the version going round the lower household, she'd thrown something, struck someone. There were 3 different objects she was supposed to have thrown and 3 different people she was supposed to have struck. None of it true, all of it now permanent. And I watched that second day, the faces of the powerful change. That's the thing you learn on the doors and in the corridors. You watch the powerful, and you see the weather coming before anyone says a word. The Chancellor, Maslin, a smooth, cold man who runs the council and has run a great deal more than the council these last years, while the king declined. Maslin's face the second day had a thing in it I didn't like. A stillness. The stillness of a man who's been handed something he's been waiting for. He went about very grave, very concerned. Such a distressing scene. Her Majesty is clearly unwell, clearly under strain. One wonders whether she's fit for the responsibilities that would fall to her in a regency. And I heard that sentence, or near it, twice in the corridors that day from 2 different mouths, which means it didn't come from 2 mouths. It came from one and was being planted. That's when I understood it wasn't going to be a family quarrel. It was going to be a war. The outburst was a door and Maslin had walked through it, and what was on the other side wasn't the Queen behaved badly, it was the Queen must go. sidelined, stripped of her place in what came after, sent quietly to some distant estate the moment the king closed his eyes, which might be weeks. And maybe that sounds like justice. Given what she'd done, I thought so myself that second day. God help me. Some mean little part of me thought, well, and good riddance, she earned it. I wrote that down so I'd have to look at it. I thought it. The first day I thought she was wrong, and the second day I thought let them take her, and both of those were in me, and I'm not proud of the second one. The fourth day. The four of them weren't speaking to each other. Still the feud on top of everything. The brothers kept to their wing, the cousins to theirs, and the outburst had, if anything, deepened the split. Because of course it had. A shock like that drives people to their corners, and each corner had its own version of what it meant. The cousins, Esme and Leora, had never liked the queen, and they were quietly satisfied, you could see it. The brothers were angrier, more shaken, Cashin especially, the heir, who'd be at the center of any regency and who I think understood faster than the others that something larger was moving. I drew Cashin's detail the fourth day, and I watched him be worked on. That's the word for it. Maslin came to him, all gravity and concern, and I stood my post and I heard the shape of it. The chancellor laying it out for the future king, reasonable, patient. Of course your highness sees that the queen's conduct makes her position impossible, that for the good of the family, the stability of the realm, arrangements must be made, and naturally the council would handle the unpleasantness. Your highness need not be troubled, need only not object. Need only not object. That's how these things are done. They don't ask you to do the deed. They ask you to look away while it's done, and looking away feels like nothing, feels like innocence, and that's the trap. And I watched Cashin almost take it. He was angry at her rightly. He was tired and grieving his grandfather in advance, and here was a smooth man offering to make a problem disappear, and asking only that he not look too closely. I watched it nearly land. And then I watched him not take it. I don't know everything that turned in him. You can't see inside a man, you can only see the outside go still in a certain way. But he asked Maslin one question, just one. He asked quietly, I barely caught it, whether, if the council could decide the queen was not family on the strength of one bad night, the council might one day decide the same of anyone, of him, of his brother, of his cousins when it suited. And Maslin gave some smooth answer, of course not, entirely different. But the question was already out, and it had teeth, and I saw it bite. That was the fourth day. That was the day the war turned, though none of us knew it yet. The sixth day. The strangest thing I ever saw in that house happened on the sixth day, and it happened in stages, and I had the rare luck to be posted where I saw most of the stages. Cashin went to his brother. The brothers had been thick as thieves their whole lives until the feud, and the feud was with the cousins, not between the two of them, so that crossing was easy. That was just two brothers. But I saw them talking low and long in a window embrasure, Cashin doing most of it, and I saw Dane's face go from sullen to listening to grim. And then this is the part, the two brothers went to the cousins. You have to understand what that cost. A year of Cold War between those two pairs, real hatred, the kind that had stopped them being in rooms together. And Cashin crossed it. He walked into the cousins' wing with his brother, into the camp of the people he'd been at war with for a year. And I was on the corridor, and I saw the door close, and I stood there for the better part of an hour not knowing what was happening behind it, only that the four of them were in one room for the first time since the dinner, since long before the dinner. I'll tell you what I think happened, though I can't swear to the words. I think Cashin told them what Maslin was doing. I think he laid it out, that this had stopped being about the queen's bad night, that it had become a thing where the council, a courtier, an unelected smooth man, was going to decide that a member of the family was no longer a member of the family, and was going to use the four of them as cover, was going to do it in their name while they looked away. And I think he asked them, the people he hated, to stop hating him for 1 hour and look at the bigger thing. Because here's what the bigger thing was, and I think they all saw it in that room. If the family let itself be divided, If the four of them stayed in their corners and let Maslin pick them off one grievance at a time, then the family was already finished. The council had already won. It didn't matter who wore the crown. The only thing that had ever made the family stronger than the men who served it was that it could not be divided. Close ranks, and you're a wall. Split, and you're just four frightened people to be moved one at a time. The door opened after that hour and the four of them came out together. Together. The brothers and the cousins who hadn't walked side by side in a year came out of that room a single thing. I stood my post and watched them pass and not one of them looked at me. Why would they? I was the door, but I felt the air change as they went by, the way it changes before weather, and I knew Maslin had lost and didn't know it yet. The seventh day. They did it at the council. I wasn't in the chamber, guards don't go in, but I was on the doors and I heard the shape of it, and I had the rest from a clerk I trust. Maslin had it all arranged. The grave faces, the prepared concerns, the careful machinery to move the queen quietly aside, all of it ready, all of it needing only that the family not object, that the four young royals sit there and look pained and say nothing while it was done in their name. And instead the four of them stood up. Together all four. And Cashin spoke for them and the clerk said it was short. It was only a few sentences. The best things always are. He said that the Queen's conduct was a matter for the family and the family alone, that the family would address it in its own way and in its own time, and that any man who imagined the council might decide who was and was not of the blood had mistaken the nature of the thing he served. That was the whole of it. Mistaken the nature of the thing he served. And then the four of them simply stood there, side by side, a wall, and there was nothing Maslin could do, because the one thing his whole play had depended on, the family divided, the family looking away was gone, was standing in front of him refusing to look away, and a courtier's power is all borrowed, all of it. The second the blood stands together and says no, the borrowing's called in and there's nothing left. Maslin folded. Of course he did. Grave concern became grave respect, of course, a family matter entirely proper, and the machinery he'd built was quietly dismantled, and within the season he was eased out himself, the way they ease out a man who's overreached, no drama, just a slow cooling and then a gap where he used to be. The Queen kept her place. Whatever came after the king, and he lingered longer than the doctors said. They always do or never do. There's no middle. The Queen kept her place in it, because four young royals who had every reason to let her fall had stood up instead and closed ranks around her. Later, I'm not sure how many days. I've been trying to decide these nights writing this what it was I actually watched, because it would be easy to write it as the beautiful thing. The family that put aside its feud, the young royals who rose above their grievances, loyalty triumphant, the wall that could not be broken. And there's truth in that, real truth. I'm not taking it back. What those four did took courage, and it healed something between them that I'd thought was past healing, and I was moved by it. I'll admit I was moved. But here is the other truth, the one that keeps me up, the one I have to write down because it's the realest thing I know about the place I've given my life to. They didn't do it for her. I want that clear. The four of them closed ranks around the Queen, but not one of them, I'd wager, had forgiven her or even liked her any better than before. She was still the woman who'd torn that table apart, still in the wrong, still the difficult outsider none of them had ever quite made room for. They didn't save her because she deserved saving. They saved her because of what it would have meant to let her fall, because the same wall that protects the innocent protects the guilty, because that's what a family is, a thing that closes around its own regardless of whether its own has earned it, and the moment it starts making exceptions, the moment it lets the council decide that this one or that one doesn't qualify anymore, it stops being a family and becomes just another institution. Just another set of people who can be divided and moved one at a time. So what I watched wasn't quite love. It was something colder and older and, I've decided, both better and worse than love. It was the dynasty's own immune system. The body closing around the wound, healthy cells and sick ones alike, because the body doesn't ask whether a cell deserves saving. The body only knows mine, and mine is the most powerful word that family has, more powerful than right, more powerful than justice, more powerful than the truth of who behaved well and who behaved badly at a dinner table one winter night. And the Queen knew it. That's the saddest piece, the one I'll end on. She knew they hadn't done it for love. She was saved, and she knew exactly what she'd been saved by, not affection, never that, but the cold blood logic of mine, the family protecting its own the way it would protect a wall, whatever the state of one of its stones. She kept her place, and she knew the price of it was knowing forever that the people who'd shielded her would still cross a room to avoid her. Saved and unloved at once. I don't know a lonelier thing. I think about her sometimes in the years since. The outburst made her a villain in every telling. The Queen's furious outburst sparked it all, the difficult woman who nearly broke the family. And the 4 young royals came out heroes, the ones who united, who rose above. And both of those are true, but neither is the thing I actually saw from the door. What I saw was a family that was right and cold at the same time, and a woman who was wrong and human at the same time. And the way the great machine of mine closed over all of it and smoothed it into a story with a villain and some heroes, because that's so much easier to live with than the truth, which is that there were no heroes and no villains that winter. Only a wall deciding it would rather stand whole with a cracked stone in it than let anyone outside the wall start pulling stones. I've broken the rule writing this. A guard's sights aren't his to keep, but somebody should know it wasn't the beautiful thing, or wasn't only. It was the other thing too, the colder thing. The thing that keeps these houses standing for 1,000 years and makes them, on the inside, in the small dining halls at night, some of the loneliest places a person can be. I'll burn this probably, or I won't. The candle's nearly gone. That's enough for tonight.